I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
They're talking about raising people's taxes again. They don't want to get spending under control. Ronald Reagan says, go ahead, make my day. Of course, he's speaking in that context as the executive, meaning he would just veto their tax increases. But in order to do that, you have to have an executive that doesn't want to raise taxes on the people. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting day yesterday. From the 92nd General Assembly. I'm sure many of you have heard the news. I was inundated yesterday with phone calls from politicos as well as casual observers who were very frustrated that the 92nd Arkansas General Assembly decided to raise taxes to pay for highways. There was a vigorous debate on the House floor yesterday, and they decided to go ahead and give Governor Hutchinson exactly what he asked for in the context of this highway plan that he came out in a press conference and said that he wanted. Now, the inside baseball is that the tax increases were something that Republicans were willing to vote for so long as the governor decided to allow the plan to include some general revenue funds, like $30 million for now, some general revenue to go to fund highways, which is something that the governor traditionally has been completely against. And this big negotiating point, this big get, well, let me back up here. What is thought to be a giant get from the governor, meaning that they got him to negotiate, come down from what he was wanting, was apparently general revenue was enough to raise taxes on the people over $415 million in this state. Now, is that figure right? I'm because what? It was a $300 million plan for the state highway department and $115 million for cities and counties. That's what this amounts to. It's a two-part plan where they tax gasoline at the wholesale level. They tax it at the wholesale level. They tax diesel at the wholesale level. And they say that will translate to only 3 cents more at the pump for regular gas and 6 cents more at the pump for diesel fuel. That's what they say. Okay? And then the second part of the plan, which is to refer a constitutional amendment to the people to not allow a half-cent sales tax to sunset as it is scheduled to do, referring it back to the people, effectively fueling the skepticism that people have about their own government. Because, and look, I know that past legislatures cannot bind future legislatures. I understand that. We probably want to remember that the next time we're in a situation like we were in 2011, 2012. I wonder if anybody said that. And I know that former state representative Jonathan Barnett is against this plan because he was the one that put in the half-cent sales tax, or at least that was his idea. You know, there was also talk about Julie Mayberry's bill. Julie Mayberry's going to be back on the program with us coming up at 7:05. She's got a competing bill that would not have raised taxes. And there was some criticism of her bill because it's been tried before and it has failed. Meaning, and you know what they left out, though? They left out that it was tried under a Democrat governor. They left that part out. And Mike Beebe didn't want to use the sales tax revenue generated from used and new vehicles. Didn't want to use that. And apparently, we have people in leadership that still don't want to use money in a common sense fashion. We're going to start. I want you to listen to State Representative John Payton. It starts at 2:17, Joe. State Representative John Payton. This was the vote on SB 336. You'll have to forgive me. I'm going to be a little redundant today because we're going to be going over this. I have a few things that I need to say about this. I don't think Republicans in this state. Let me back up. I don't think Republicans who voted for this thing yesterday truly understand what it is you have done as far as the overall tax burden to the people of Arkansas. I don't think you fully understand it. I don't mean to be. I don't know if you've comprehended exactly what you've done. I'll do the math here in a minute, but I'm going to throw the numbers out for you, and these are the governor's numbers I'm going to throw out there for you. Ready for this? Over the last 4 years, you cut income taxes for middle-income people $100 million. Then 2 years later, you came back and you cut income taxes for the poorest Arkansans. That amounted to $50 million. Okay? So that's $150 million total. Then in this session, 2 years later, you come back and you cut income taxes, $95 million. All right? You with me here? Now, that doesn't really go into effect for 2 years fully, but we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, right? You've got $100 million, $50 million, another $100 million. So what is that? What is that, $250 million? And in one vote, you simply increase taxes by $415 million on the people. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? Here's State Representative John Payton. Listen. He rises to speak against the bill.
Members, I'll be brief. $168 million. That's how much general revenue grew from 2017 to 2018.
Thank you.
In 1 year.
Thank you.
It grew $168 million. Since I've been here in 2013, year over year, it's $514 million higher than it was in 2013. The general revenue growth has been, and I believe will continue to be, sufficient to fix this problem if we would just file the bill and cast the votes to do it. Thank you.
That's pretty succinct. That's pretty succinct, right?
Representative Payton has spoken against the bill. Would anyone
Over
like to speak for the bill?
$500 million.
Richmond, you're recognized to speak for the bill.
The general revenue continues to grow, and we want to spend it. We just want to continue to spend it. Now, here's the majority leader, State Representative Marcus Richmond, rises to speak in favor of this highway plan that has tax increases in it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Come here to do something that I didn't think I would ever do in my political career, and that's encourage you to raise taxes. It just wasn't something I thought that would be necessary. But unfortunately, it is. How long have we been trying to do something with our highways? It's been going on long before I got here, and yet nothing's been done. The can gets kicked down the road, and the cost continues to grow. Our highways are deteriorating even at a faster rate than they were before. And the longer we put this off, the more expensive it's going to be and the more dangerous it's going to be. Now, I understand the reluctance especially some of that are here new, this is the first time that you've had a bill that you're really getting some sniper fire from the tree lines. People are taking pot shots at you. They're unhappy. Well, you need to expect that. Anytime that you have a good bill, it's going to make somebody mad somewhere. Otherwise, your bill does nothing. It has no impact, really. That's the difference about this bill. This bill does have an impact. It's an opportunity to change. But you must understand something else, that you're always just one vote away from making somebody upset about something. Sometimes you're just one non-vote away from making somebody upset. You cannot come down here and legislate and be effective if that every time, a cricket breaks wind, you dive for cover. It simply won't work. You've got to stand tall and sometimes take the heat. That was pretty good, wasn't it? But the deal is, you can't be afraid. I understand, it's uncomfortable. You're getting feedback from your district. But the same people that are saying, do not raise this tax, at the very end of that sentence, they go, and by the way, when are you going to fix my roads? And that's really what it comes down to. The other thing is that you hear that there's other proposals. I've got a brand new proposal. I found it here on a shelf. I pulled it out. I blowed the dust out of it. I know that it never passed before, but I'm running this bill now.
Yeah, here it is.
Therefore, it's a whole new ball game.
It should be.
What's changed?
Republicans took over.
Nothing has changed.
No, that's what changed, is Republicans took over.
The same thing that got that general revenue bill killed 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, will
under
get it killed
Mike Beebe.
This time.
Under Mike Beebe.
You think that sniper fire is uncomfortable? Wait till the education mafia carpet bombs you with B-52s. They will come after you, and they will stay after you, and that backbone will turn to a noodle because they're relentless. What about the senior citizen centers? What about the libraries? What about all those? It will be relentless what they do to you. And even if it gets out of this chamber, it's not going to get out of the Senate.
Because of the...
And by some miracle, somebody sprinkles fairy dust on it, and the people down there are using their medical marijuana or whatever else, and they pass it, and it gets to the governor's office, it's going to get vetoed. This is as close as we've ever been of having a highway bill. If this one doesn't pass, you're not going to get a highway bill. And you're going to have to go back home and explain why. Because there's a lot of people that care about this. Because our roads have gone from being basically an inconvenience to being dangerous. I have on Highway 80 a bridge that goes across a little creek called Dutch Creek, there by a little community called Blue Ball. 2 occasions that I know of, school bus from Walden, mirrors taken off of it by a big truck, and then this last fall, Pottsville football team coming back from a game, mirrors taken off again. I don't intend to just sit here and hope that nothing bad happens to the next school bus that gets whacked. Because one of these days, it's going to get hit, and it's going to be casualties. People, kids are going to get hurt. It's time for us to go ahead and step up and do the hard thing and vote yes on this bill and pass this bill because it's a good compromise bill. How do I know that? Because there's something in it that everybody hates. So pass this bill. Need a good vote, and I'd appreciate a good vote.
All right, stop for a second.
Thank you.
That was State Representative Marcus Richmond. He's the majority leader saying, you got to vote for this thing because of safety reasons. Now, these are similar arguments that you heard 2 years ago when their attempt to raise taxes failed. Dan Douglas made similar arguments, State Representative Dan Douglas, about chug holes and potential fatalities on the roads. Okay, so listen, I have articulated the other side's argument on this. They think that the roads are going to be, they're going to get so bad that they get even more expensive to repair. I understand that argument. I get you can make a reasoned argument like that. However, the fact of the matter is, with 2 votes yesterday, the Arkansas General Assembly essentially wiped out the tax cuts that we've heard about over the last 4 years. I want you to understand that. And that's if you take the government's numbers as genuine. That's if you leave out, that's if you leave out other little fee increases on your tires and things like that. And by the way, we've got more fee increases coming this session with 911 bills and everything else. They're going to raise your cell phone taxes. $100 million tax cut for middle-income Arkansans when Asa was first in office. 2 years later, a $50 million tax cut. Remember, we couldn't do real tax reform then because we had to have a task force set up. So instead, we do $50 million for low income. Then this session, we do a $95 million cut for the higher earners in Arkansas. So that's essentially $250 million. As long as my number are my numbers right? Was it $100 million for middle income or was it $150? I can't remember. Anyway, $245 million, and in one vote they vote to raise your taxes. Now I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Well, we voted to refer it to the people," but the people seem to want to vote yes on every amendment that we put out there. Just go look at the statistics. It's you put an amendment before people and they just vote for it. I don't understand that, but that's just what happens. $415 million with 2 votes. They raised the net tax burden. They raised it's really speechless. And I'm going to be honest. I really didn't think there was anybody who cared until the vote happened yesterday and my phone started blowing up. I'm serious. I really didn't think anyone really cared anymore. But let me tell you guys something. They do. They do. They're watching. And I know there was not any consequences from watching government growth over the last 4 years. There was no electoral consequences. I understand that. But that may not be the case this time. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. But this is just this is really incredible to me. I don't think it's going to last forever. Quite frankly, I don't think it can. I think fiscally we are in such a bad shape. There's many people that just understand that fiscally Arkansas is on a really, really risky footing, and so they're coming back. They're coming back to the people for more money. Everything, generally speaking, everything that I have said since 2013, when they expanded government, the largest expansion of government in Arkansas history, has come true. All of our parodies about revenue generation, all of that, those are all accurate. They were all prophetic, but not because I have some sort of supernatural power, because they're numbers. It's all about the numbers. And from the very beginning, back in 2013, we were not able to afford what it was we were doing when it came to expanding our welfare programs. We simply were not. When you put 1 million people on welfare, when you go from 700,000 to putting 1 million people when you only have 3 million people in your state, this is what happens. Tax increases. Now notice nobody out there legitimately is saying we have to raise your taxes to pay for our roads because we made bad decisions in the past and we're spending money somewhere else. Very few people in leadership are actually saying that. Instead, they're using the argument, our roads are now unsafe. There's a lot of things that have led up to this point, and the same leaders who have gotten us here are still the leaders, but there's really no reflection as to why we are here. I want to also remind you, we have to go to break. We're going to take a minute break. I want to also remind you that we had, a 2-year task force on tax relief. I really, I don't know if I can hold out the benefit of the doubt anymore. I mean, I don't know if I haven't seen any other legislation filed. Are there more tax cuts coming that I don't know about? That would be nice. But, I mean, we're still in the middle of the session. We still have another half to go here. Let's take a break, reset. We'll be back in just a moment. The Arkansas General Assembly voted to, and now it's going to go to the governor's desk, to raise your taxes yesterday. How do you feel about it? 870-275-9799.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The tendencies of the left at this point. They are obsessed with socialism, and they are obsessed with the Green New Deal, as they call it. Of course, the cure to climate change is socialism. Those are their ideas. Even President Trump at CPAC, one of the things he said about wind energy, he made fun of it in terms of saying, like, honey, is the wind blowing today? I'd like to watch television. I thought that was pretty funny. We have this headline here. The Green New Deal is estimated to cost $93 trillion. Here to talk a little bit about that. What would that do to the economy? We have economist Dr. Michael Busler is on the line. He's a professor at Stockton University. Dr. Busler, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're always...
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, do we have any more of this? Who's next up here? Go ahead and hit play, Joe. Who's next in this? The State Representative Marcus Richmond spoke for the bill. Did anyone else speak against it? I can't remember.
Representative Richmond has spoken for the bill. Would anyone like to speak against the bill? Representative Meeks, you're recognized to speak against the bill.
Okay, Meeks. All right, Meeks spoke about the hybrid thing. He's upset that the hybrid taxes. I mean, that makes sense, I guess. I just, my goodness. Let me see here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm hoping that Representative Holcomb, maybe in his closing statement, can address this issue. One of the concerns that I have about this bill is the assessment that we're doing on the hybrids and the electric vehicles. Now, understandably, these vehicles use less gasoline, but if we look at that $100, how many gallons of gas, how many miles does a hybrid driver have to drive to equate to $100 worth of extra cost a year? So the average gasoline driver is going to have to go, just some quick back of the napkin math, 30,000 miles or more to make $100 worth of added expense a year. For a hybrid driver, it's potentially double that. So I'm not quite sure how this fairness piece works out for hybrid drivers. And if we make these vehicles that are more energy efficient even that much more expensive to own, it's going to make people less apt to want to purchase and use these vehicles. And these are the vehicles of the future that we want people to transition to. So with that, I hope Representative Holcomb might address that when he comes back for his closing remarks. Otherwise, I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Meeks has spoken against the bill. Would anyone like to speak for the bill?
All right, so all right, stop.
The bill?
Then Johnny Ryan went down there. The final vote on that bill, which was SB 336, 71 yes votes to 26 no votes to 1 not voting. This is a House of Representatives that has a supermajority of Republicans in the 75? Is that what it is? Anyway, we go once more into the breach. Back in just a moment. Very excited to have you on. Did you catch that headline at all last week? $93 trillion if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gets what she wants.
Yeah, I did see that. I'm not sure that may even be a little bit low when you consider everything that she wants to do. Look, when you get down to the basics, climate is changing. There's no doubt about that. Climate has been changing for thousands of years. There are places where you have deserts now, used to have fertile ground, and vice versa. So the climate is always changing. The left says the climate change is being accelerated by human activity. While they claim that's a fact, most of the scientific community is not quite sure that's the case. And to upend your entire economy for something that may not be effective is really not a very good idea. You know, I'm old enough to remember back in the early 1970s, the scientists were saying in 50 years we're likely to have an ice age. Now they've changed that, and we're having a global warming issue. So things like this operate cyclically, and before we go about destroying an entire economy, we ought to think a little bit harder about this. What they want to do, essentially, is take over the healthcare industry, which accounts for about 17% of all economic activity, take over the energy industry, and really they're proposing taking over much of the of education by offering free college tuition for at least 2 years to every American. Now, all of those programs would bankrupt the country, and they're really counter to what made this country great. You know, when you take a look at it, the U.S. went from the birth of a nation in the late 1700s to the number one most prosperous economy in the world in about 150 years. There were other nations that are hundreds of years older, some thousands of years older, yet we were able to do that in a short period of time and maintain it. The reason was, in my opinion, there were four basic values we had. We valued individual freedom and freedom in markets. Mm-hmm. We valued individual responsibility, where people were primarily responsible for their own welfare. We had a system that had very low rates of taxation, and indeed we founded this country because we were overtaxed in the first place. And fourthly, we had a very limited role for government. With that, people were free to pursue their dreams. They were free to keep most of the income that they earned, and the country prospered.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Good morning to you. Welcome. Some of you taking your first sips of caffeinated beverage this morning. We appreciate you doing that, starting the beginning of your day with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, I got an email yesterday about something I wanted to share with you. You see, there is apparently a program or an effort to essentially make dads better. The idea of trying to stand up for men, in the family and the positive things they contribute to, raising kids and, just basically being better dads. It's called the Arkansas Better Dads program. Here to talk more about that, we actually have Mr. Randy Jumper. He is a young adults pastor with the First Assembly of God out of North Little Rock. Randy, welcome to the program this morning.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity to be here to share with you the cool things that are happening in the state of Arkansas as it relates to fatherhood and Arkansas Better Dads. Absolutely.
So tell us about this. There's an event, there's a press conference later today, right, to announce a fatherhood initiative. Is that correct?
That's correct. Studies have shown very clearly that children who have an active father figure in their life are statistically better suited to live a life of fullness, as well as not be on government assistance and programs, less likely to commit crimes, more likely to live a fulfilled life. And this program is a initiative across the state to help the men in Arkansas be a more active influence and help to the children in their lives, as well as preparing children for the future, young men, to be better dads themselves when they grow up.
I think this is something that doesn't get emphasized enough in our culture when we see this moral decay. I think it really does come from a lack of strong, good male role models, and there is no better. I mean, in my life, I learned what I know of how to be a man from my dad, so it's kind of, it's hard for me to even imagine not having a dad growing up, because I was blessed to have an intact family, and not everybody has that. And so what are some of the things that the Arkansas Better Dad program does to try to help men be better fathers?
Well, we begin with the premise that the narrative is a little bit flawed by our media. I'm in my mid-40s. I've got 2 kids myself, but the media portrayal growing up when I was a kid of a father was typically the Homer Simpson sort of idea, this bumbling idiot who couldn't control himself, or Ozzy Osbourne or Tony Soprano. Regardless whether you like those shows or not, the overall image was that fathers were buffoons who were the comic foil. But that's not the real narrative. In Arkansas, we have thousands of men who are good dads, thousands of men who do love their kids, and thousands of men who want to be better. And rather than going after and attacking negative stereotypes and being honest with where we are in reality, and that men who are good dads can be better. And let's create programs and processes to enable to help them. At the same time, we know there are whole groups of men who, because they're now a generation, they grew up fatherless, they don't know what to do. They don't have the tools and skill set. They didn't see what it was like to grow up with a father in their life, so now they're expected to do it on their own. And so our program is a cooperative group across the state, partnering with dozens and dozens of different great organizations, including churches, and, including schools, as well as other civic groups and nonprofits that are working to provide skill training and mentoring to men. We've targeted certain populations that are at risk. We're working with a group of dads whose kids have disabilities, helping them work through those processes. Just the tools aren't there. We've got programs for guys who are themselves in rehab or reentry programs. They're coming back into society expecting to be dads. We actually have a program now working in Pulaski County for teenage dads. Guys who they've had children, maybe even the courts have wisely decided that they don't need to be an active presence in their child's life right now. But our society is going to expect them to still be involved in 4, 5, 6 years down the road, and their kids are going to need them. So we're working with training and mentoring, as well as just raising the overall feel in the state of Arkansas that if you're a dad, if you're a 5, you can be a 6. If you're a 7, you can be an 8. Well, everybody can be a better dad if they'll intentionally focus on it.
Yeah. We're talking again with Randy Jumper from the First Assembly of God from North Little Rock and this Arkansas Better Dads program. Now, specifically, the event today is also announcing a partnership with the Arkansas Department of Workforce Services. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a great partnership that has developed, and it's fascinating. I'm not always a huge fan of government funding and programs. However, this is exactly what I want my tax dollars to be used for. TANF is a federal program I'm sure you're familiar with, temporary assistance for needy families. It flows in the state of Arkansas through the Arkansas Department of Work Services. And even the government has discovered that if men are involved in their kids' lives, they're going to pay less money over the long term. As kids are developed and their maturity is influenced by positive role models. And so the federal government has made programs like this and the National Fatherhood Initiative and other things sort of do preventative maintenance. And that's the kind of thing that we're doing. We're not starting something. We're not carving something that doesn't exist. We're finding existing programs across the state in local communities where the people know what they're doing. Because my conviction is that the folks in Dumas, they're doing good work down there. What they need is someone to come alongside them and say, hey, you're doing right. Let me encourage you. Let me help you.
Yeah.
And let me become a catalyst for being effective in your community. Rather than coming top down and telling you what you do, a big part of what we do is finding existing partners in the community, because we believe in Arkansas and we believe in the men in Arkansas. And so we try to help those groups do that with these funds.
You know, I really appreciate what you're saying, because I appreciate that part about not talking down, because it really is about genuine compassion, genuinely wanting to help somebody, and that's done through making relationships. And matter of fact, on Friday, I was kind of planning out the rest of the week. On Friday, I was going to go over the story of Demario Davis. Demario Davis is he's from Mississippi. He played for the Red Wolves up in Northeast Arkansas, at Arkansas State. When he was first there, he was arrested for shoplifting. And then the coaches, he's now speaking up for criminal justice reform. He now plays for the New Orleans Saints. I think he led the league in tackles or something this last year. So he's a success. But what he talks about how he had these coaches that came around him. He became a Christian, and now he's got a wife, got 3 kids, and he's raising his kids. He's being a dad, and he's doing all these things that he didn't have growing up. And so it really does take something. And he says how fortunate he was, because if he wasn't an athlete, he wouldn't have been able to make bail, and then he would have just been a statistic. And how fortunate and blessed he is to have been taken care of the way he was. And so when I hear you talk, Randy, I kind of feel like this is very much the same deal, where you guys are trying to be those facilitators to try to help people break the cycle and become better fathers.
And that's our goal. One of the big pieces here is to be positive. I do think the average guy out there listening to us right now who's got kids, he loves his family. He loves his kids. He may not even he may be separated from them because of separation of marriage, but he still loves his kids. What he wants to do, what he needs, is someone to come alongside him and put your arm around him and say, if you'll do these 3 or 4 things, here's some just insights on what you could do, small things, for being able to communicate how much you do care about your kids. And then we're going to create some opportunities. We're looking at programs, free events for dads and their kids, free events to serve in the community with partners like Habitat for Humanity and Game and Fish, all kinds of programs statewide, where then they can say, hey, I know these things are expensive. If you're having a hard time right now, well, this is free. You come bring your kids, you be a part of it. You create memories that will last a lifetime. Arkansas Better Dads can't help kids unless we help their dads help their kids.
Yeah.
And that's our goal.
So the website is arbetterdads.com, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Randy Jumper from the First Assembly of God out of North Little Rock, we appreciate you coming on this morning. Thanks for sharing this exciting news.
I'm excited to be a part of what you're doing. Thank you very much.
All righty. Randy Jumper, everybody. Folks, we're going to reset here, and then we're going to come back. Wanted to highlight that, though. There's going to be a press conference today announcing all of that. I wanted to get a head start on it. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the news out of the Capitol in Little Rock. The Arkansas General Assembly yesterday approved the governor. Listen to this, Hunter Field, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, headline, House advances governor's plan on road funding. Subheadline, Bill gains approval, proposal for 2020 ballot cleared too. In that headline, there's nothing about increasing taxes. Just an observation. We're going to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Everything this Green New Deal wants to do is exactly opposite to that. It would take away individual freedoms. The government would control key industries. Once they control the healthcare and education, they would mandate who gets what. They lose individual freedom. The government would take care of people, so you'd lose individual responsibility. To pay for this, you're going to have massive tax increases, not just on the wealthy, but mostly on the middle class. So we have high taxes rather than low. And now you have the government involved in major industries, so it's a big role for government rather than a small role. So it's everything that's against the values that made this country great.
Let me ask you this. We're talking with Dr. Michael Busler. So this is a big Democrat leftist idea. I wonder if you think that the Republicans have any I don't know. Do they have any difficulty convincing some on
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up? It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Well, thank you once again. The reason for the fee on hybrids and electric vehicles, that was recommended by the tax reform group. You know, I said it wasn't a perfect bill, and the things we do here in the House of Representatives, we do kind of like I did when I was teaching school. I would monitor and adjust. And as we monitor this bill, as we study it more, as technology progresses, there may be things that we need to come back and change. But this is the best that we can do right now. Many times when I leave my home to go to different destinations in my district, there's two ways to get there.
So this is State Representative Mike Holcomb from Pine Bluff. He's the one that was running this bill.
Destination, because that's the best highway. Let's pass this bill so people don't take the long way around and not come through Arkansas. Thank you.
All right.
Representative Holcomb is closed for the bill. We do have one pair on the desk. Representative Richardson votes yes. Representative McCollum votes no.
Okay.
Witnessed by Representative Hawks. Representative McCollum, is the present member.
So Ford passed the vote.
Are there any procedural objections?
They're about
to this
vote.
pair?
Go ahead and skip past this, Joe. Get to the next little
Please
beat.
do not vote
bit.
either of these two voting machines.
Matter of fact, just get to Julie Mayberry. What we timestamped that one. State Representative Julie Mayberry, who's coming up. We wrote the timestamp down. You remember that? We wrote it down on a piece of paper over there. State Representative Julie Mayberry is going to be on the program here in 15 minutes. She actually, I believe, raised a procedural question yesterday as to whether or not we needed 75 votes instead of 51 votes, a supermajority, because you're talking about an existing tax. Some people think, and I know this may be Greek to some of you, but the fact of the matter is, an existing tax in the state of Arkansas, if you're going to lower it or raise it, according to our Constitution, you have to have 75% of each chamber, okay? But if you create a new tax, you only need 51% of each chamber, a simple majority. Well, right now we're already paying a gas tax. And they're saying, no, it's a brand new wholesale tax. Well, what's the point of the amendment in our Constitution that requires, what's the point? I'm telling you, this thing is ripe for a legal challenge. Oh, and by the way, they're going to be collecting this tax immediately, starting in October. And I say immediately because, to me, that's pretty quick, considering if they cut taxes, we have to wait 2 years in order to actually see the tax cuts. But if they're going to raise taxes, the government can actually, they're very efficient. Here's State Representative Julie Mayberry about referring the current half-cent sales tax that's set to expire, again, a part of the governor's highway plan, referring it back to the people to make sure it stays intact. Listen.
Take care of this here in this chamber. Each of us were elected November 6th to represent about 30,000 people. We have a representative republic form of government, not a direct democracy. And voters have elected us to make decisions in this chamber. There are a lot of tough votes in this chamber, I'm sure you would agree, ones that would be nice to say, hey, just let the voters decide. The Arkansas Constitution gives us the authority to vote yes or to vote no to a sales tax increase. In fact, all but the 0.5% that we're currently talking about and an 8-cent conservation tax have all been created through acts in the legislative body. Here lately, the General Assembly has been, through general election, we've been adding about 2 or 3 or so constitutional amendments. We're muddying up our Constitution. Is that what we're supposed to be using it for?
Every single session.
It's our responsibility. We have access to DFNA. We have access to BLR, great research department. We have access to talk to the highway department. We can get the information and we can make the decisions right here and right now if we want to continue a 0.5-cent sales tax. Number 2, promises need to be kept. Another reason to be against the proposal, the word cap, the word sunset, phrases such as 10-year construction program and a temporary tax were all used to describe Amendment 91, which placed a 10-year, 1/2-cent sales tax to fund new highways. That was a promise by lawmakers at that time and supporters of that 2012 proposal to increase the sales tax. I would hope that 10 years from now, future legislators would help us keep our word. I know for a fact that the sponsor of the original piece of legislation for that 0.5-cent sales tax would appreciate us helping him keep his word. Number 3, lower taxes. I'm pretty sure the majority of this chamber told voters that we were coming to the Capitol to lower our taxes, not increase them. This tax is set to end in 2023, and it needs to end. Though through some searching that I had over the internet, I discovered some information on Sales Tax Handbook. It listed the top 20 cities in the nation with the highest sales tax, including city, county, and state. Did you know that 11 of the top 20 cities in the country are in Arkansas? 11 of the top 20 cities in the entire country for the highest sales tax are found right here in Arkansas. 11 of the top 20 in the entire country.
That's because we're overtaxed.
Our people need relief. Sales tax hurts the people who need the most help. Number 4, to prevent more spending. If this makes it to the ballot, a campaign for and against this happens. No telling how much money is going to be spent on that campaign, but I do know that that's money that could have been spent creating jobs. It's money that could have been spent donating to a nonprofit, saving for a rainy day, investing somewhere, or perhaps even filling a few potholes. There is a false impression that the only way to fund highways is this way. You know what? It goes to voters, and we won't know if they're going to vote yes or no. So isn't that also a little risky?
It's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I'd appreciate a no vote. Thank you.
All right, that's State Representative Julie Mayberry.
Has spoken against
she's
the
going to be
resolution.
on the program here in a little bit. You know, overall tax burden is the only thing that matters. Does the overall tax burden increase? Does the overall tax burden on the people decrease? Does the overall tax burden on the people stay the same? When it's all said and done, what's that number going to be? Right now, we're on track for it to be demonstrably higher. And it's I don't even know how they're going to argue with the numbers. I'm assuming they just don't plan to. I was expecting some numbers saying, listen, you know, we've actually I don't see how you can argue with these numbers by any objective measure. Not to mention, folks, the internet sales tax has not been run yet, which will be even more money taken from the people because businesses pass on increased costs for doing business to consumers. So that will be even more money coming out of the people's pocket when the internet sales tax comes here. I mean, let me ask honestly. I'm doing this for effect. What's it going to take? What's it going to take for this version of republicanism, whatever you want to call it? You're not going to be able to. This way of doing business and running the state of Arkansas is not going to last forever. You're either going to run out of other people's money and be embarrassed and lead the state on, into a fiscal crisis, which will actually elect more Democrats because the media is going to turn on you because they're going to say that we tried conservatism when we actually never have tried conservatism. Right? What's it going to take? Are the people of Arkansas going to have to put yellow vests on and go to the Capitol to make? I mean, seriously. I mean, is that what it's going to take for you guys to understand that we actually believed you when you said this is our philosophy of governing? I think most concisely it was summed up by State Representative John Payton, who said revenue has increased over the last 4 years $500 million. We could solve the problem, but there's no will to actually vote to do something like that. Now, think about that. There was the people that spoke against this bill for the most part, these two bills. I was thankful. I'm thankful for Representative Mayberry because she spoke the truth about what I believe the most accurate reality is. Not the perception, but the actual reality. And again, I'm not sure the General Assembly really understands what they did yesterday with 2 votes. I mean, I know they're funding roads. I know they got that. But Asa Hutchinson, his tax cut, $100 million the first 2 years, $50 million the next, $100 million this year. And with 2 votes, You vote to potentially raise taxes $415 million. That wipes away everything that's been done over the last 4 years. What about the tax relief in the task force?
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
On, what a bad deal this is. I guess that's the reason is because historically, Republicans, they do say that they are against those things that you just mentioned about, higher taxes and the loss of individual liberty and things like that. But over time, the Republicans have supported some of those things.
Yes, they have. And really, the country started to lean into more social responsibility right around the turn of the century. In early 1900s, 1913, we put the federal income tax in, and that kept going. The rates kept going up. We put the Social Security in 1936, and that increased taxes and took more social responsibility. Then we had the Medicare in the mid-'60s, which also added to taxes and more social responsibility. The mood of the country was that we should, because we are so prosperous, we should have more of a social responsibility. And I think the Republicans, even though philosophically they may have been against it, I think they just sort of went along with it because that seemed to be what the majority of the people want.
Yeah.
You bring up a very good point, though. If we're trying to convince people that socialism is not right, we have to make a good argument. Part of the reason it's so popular now, especially with younger people, is the economy has been stagnant for decades. Prior to 2018, we just missed 3% growth, but prior to 2018, the last year we had 3% annual growth was 2005. The last period we had, last time we had 4% annual growth was the year 2000. That's the longest period of economic stagnation, in my opinion, in U.S. history. The result of that was that college graduates couldn't find jobs that suited their qualifications, so they took jobs where you didn't really need a college degree, and now they're very upset at that. Because they took those jobs, people without college degrees didn't have any opportunity. They dropped out of the workforce, became discouraged workers. There's still about 5 or 6 million of those. They're pretty unhappy too. So when you talk to these people that are unhappy about what's happening, and you mentioned socialistic programs, that tends to be very appealing to them.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I think President Trump is fixing this by growing the economy and giving people opportunity. The idea of socialism will not be as appealing.
That is a great point, Dr. Busler, about, you don't really think about basically a generation of people that have not had a good economy to, pursue their dreams and accomplish what they want to accomplish. And so when you read in the Green New Deal, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she had a botched rollout of the whole thing, and she released a document that actually had on, and then they went back and edited it, but they wanted to promise economic security for those even unwilling to work. Now, if you're stuck at a dead-end job somewhere, maybe socialism sounds good, because people are going to think about themselves first.
That's exactly right. And, you bring up a great point. There's a whole generation here that has never felt American prosperity. You need the economy to grow at least at a 4% annual rate. That'll give opportunity for everybody. With all that growth, we're producing more, the standard of living goes up, and you feel prosperous. This generation has never felt prosperity. And as a result of that, having the government give me things that I don't have the opportunity to get for myself looks very appealing. And I say to my college students, I teach in a university that was started as a liberal arts college, so it's still very liberal oriented. But I tell them, look, while you tend to favor these things today, once you get out there and start working and earning a good income, you're going to realize to pay for all those things you wanted, it's coming out of your paycheck.
Yes.
And you're going to realize that you're working and you're losing a third or more of your income to pay for all these programs. when I was in college, I went through the same thing. Look, I was back in the days of hippies, back in the late 60s and early 70s, and we favored government helping everybody. And then we got into the workforce, and we said, hey, look, all these things, we're finally making a good income, but I don't seem to be living a high standard of living, and I turn around and look at my paycheck, and the reason is I'm paying all these taxes, federal income tax, state income tax, sales taxes, property taxes, etc. So I say to my students, once you get out there, you may have a different view.
Can we talk?
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We talked about this a lot in the last hour, in the first hour. This headline here, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, House advances governor's plan on road funding. This, of course, was the plan that included tax increases at the wholesale level, as well as another plan that refers a constitutional amendment to make a half-cent sales tax scheduled to sunset permanent. And with 2 votes yesterday, the General Assembly is sending something to the governor's desk that could potentially raise revenue in the tune of $415 million from the people. Here to talk a little more about that, we have State Representative Julie Mayberry. She is the author of a competing bill that would fund roads without raising taxes. State Representative Mayberry, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Just want to say, number one, we played your comments, what you said on the House floor in speaking out against the constitutional amendment. It was very succinct, and I really appreciate it because I'm just glad that your colleagues heard the truth about what it was they were about to do. And I understand that you raised a procedural concern at one point yesterday as to whether or not you guys needed a threshold of 75% instead of a simple majority. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was brought to my attention that there were concerns about that based on Amendment 19. And let me read Amendment 19 to you. It's in our Constitution. It's actually been moved to Article 5 if someone starts searching for it. But the exact words say, none of the rates for property, excise, privilege, or personal taxes now levied shall be increased by the General Assembly except after the approval of the qualified electors voting therein at an election, or, in case of emergency, by the votes of 3/4 of the members elected to each house of the General Assembly. So, in reading that, we are talking about raising the gas tax, and the gas tax existed in 1934 when this was passed. And so there is thought that since we're raising the gas tax, that we would need the 3/4 vote in the House in order to pass it. And I felt that other legislators needed to be aware that there might be some constitutional concerns about this. So the only way that I could make sure everyone is on board was to question it. So I had to ask the Speaker, what is the vote threshold? And he said 51, and yes, I did challenge that. We were then moved to a Rules Committee in which it was, I presented my case, and I said, well, to me it looks like it's the same tax. It's converted to cents per gallon, it's levied on the same people, and the money is used for the same thing. And anyway, the Department of Finance and Administration presented their case to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee agreed that it should be 51 votes.
Now, so DFNA, Department of Finance and Administration, what was their case?
Well, that gets really complicated, and I would be scared to completely explain their case. But I do understand that it has to deal with, if I'm getting it right, that because that the retail part of it would be sent to the wholesaler. I mean, we're talking tiny little change in it, and I would hope that maybe there is someone out there who follows tax laws, follows constitutional laws, would want to examine that a little bit closer, and look into it and make sure. We only had 70 votes on the House floor, or 71, I'm sorry, on that one. You know, so, I mean, it could be challenged. It was also, I brought up that it says in case of emergency. In other words, there needed to be an emergency clause on this as well. And, you know, I'm fine with the ruling because at least we were given the information, and those members of the House Rules Committee heard it, and they agreed that it was 51. I'm trying to just bring attention to the fact that, you know, this was an issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, they made the ruling and we moved forward.
Yeah.
So if it gets challenged, everyone was on,
yes,
you know, was given that information.
Well, and the fact that you raised the procedural question in a future court case, I would imagine a judge would be very interested in that piece of information. Also, the other thing that would be interesting in a court case would be the fact, like you said, the people pushing this are saying it's only 3 cents a gallon more. So they're even really sort of admitting that they're taxing the same product twice, but it's the same product that everybody wants. They're just saying it's a new tax when in reality it's the same thing. And so it is on shaky legal grounds, and who knows what would happen. But I think you mentioned, are there people out there that watch taxes and everything? Yes, there are, and I fully expect this to be challenged. I really do. Now, State Representative Mayberry, you took to the floor to talk more about this, and you said things like, you know, you're pretty sure the majority of people in this chamber did not tell their constituents that they were coming down here to raise their taxes. But it appears that that's what is going to happen. I mean, when you look at what we've done this session so far, if you even look over the last 4 years, I was amazed when I had a phone call from a friend, and I was amazed that if you take the tax cuts from 4 years ago, $100 million for middle income. Then 2 years later, $50 million for lower income. Then this year, $100 million, $95 million. And, you know, so about $250 million. And in 2 votes yesterday, we've potentially raised $415 million in revenue, which essentially washes away all of that. All this. And I thought that was incredible.
It is incredible. Now, I will say the one doesn't go into effect until the voters of the state of Arkansas vote to pass it. But so, you know, it's just kind of still kicking the can. It's still kind of kicking the can down the road. But my point in the well was we can take care of this here. You know, this is our responsibility. This is what we've been elected to, and that's how most of the sales tax has been done in the legislative body. And so let's go on record if we think this is the right idea or not. Let's not muddy our Constitution. I don't think that's what our Constitution should be used for.
I want to remind everybody, we're talking with State Representative Julie Mayberry. I want to remind everybody, your idea would have slowly, gradually used the sales tax revenue generated from new and used vehicles and other things that are, you know, associated with driving, and would have funded our highways that way. Now, this was a plan that almost, I believe, got out of, did it almost get out of committee back when Governor Beebe was in office? Is that right?
Correct. In 2013, it was shy 1 vote in the House Transportation Committee and did not make it out. Beebe kind of put down his thumb and stopped it. And then it was brought back up by Dan Douglas in 2015, and it actually did make it out of committee. I was on that transportation committee, but it never made it to the House floor. It just kind of died in between the committee and the House floor. Hutchinson was our new governor at the time and said, we're not ready for this. and so it died then as well. So this is not a new plan. I mean, that was mentioned yesterday. This is not, and I'm not saying that this is the perfect plan. But what I like about the plan is there's some flexibility, and we can make changes every 2 years when we come back into session, or if we're in a fiscal session, or if it was a dire emergency, we could call a special session. Not that I want to do that, but a permanent sales tax of 0.5 cent is permanent. I mean, I guess you can go back into the Constitution and go through all that to get rid of it, but that's really hard to do. And I would like some more flexibility. We need that.
There was also a moment, I guess somebody, State Representative John Payton, your colleague, he spoke against this as well, and he wasn't down there very long. He just said, hey, over the last 4 years, the revenue has increased to the government over $500 million. And I thought, wow, that's something. That's a lot of money right there, and the revenue continues to increase to the government. And if we were to just kind of prioritize some of that and maybe cut spending or just commit to not spending it, there's some bills out there, State Representative Mayberry, there's some bills out there that think, hey, some of these agencies need to just maybe not get an increase next year, or maybe even cut 1% from this year to next year. I mean, if we were to kind of buckle down and do some of those things, I think we'd have real money. Right. Now, I agree. I would, if you don't mind, if I can share one bill that I filed yesterday, because it kind of relates back to the highway funding bill. I had filed a bill, HB 1300, and basically it was 15. Oh my goodness, all these different numbers. Let me tell you what the bill did. It right now in the state of Arkansas, you can deduct your gambling losses, and I don't think you should be able to deduct your gambling losses. Our state does not need to subsidize bad habits and entertainment, and I believe that that's what gambling is. If you want to go gamble, you go gamble, but I shouldn't, as a taxpayer, have to fund that. And so the original idea was to use to cut out the gambling losses and use that money towards highways. And that was going to put about $11.5 million back into general revenue. I was suggesting $10 million towards highways. Obviously, we don't need that now if we've got these other plans and they're passing and they're going through. So what I would like to do instead is still get rid of that gambling deduction and use that money to fund the developmental disabilities waiver waiting list. There are children and adults with disabilities that are waiting 8 years for services, and they are on this waiting list, 3,000 people approximately, and $11 million would take anywhere from 700 to 800 people off of that waiting list. Wow. So to me, the choice becomes, do we want to subsidize gambling, or do we want to help people with disabilities? And I think it's all about priorities, and that's what we need to do with a lot of things in our government. We need to look at what are our priorities and put those things first. And I believe taking care of the weakest and the most vulnerable around us is extremely important, and especially when you take into consideration, I am very pro-life. I have a daughter with spina bifida. I was one of those moms at 19 weeks pregnant being told that her daughter is going to be born with spina bifida. And in many situations, anywhere from 70 to 90% of babies that are prenatally diagnosed with a birth defect are aborted. We want to give people the know-how to know that their child is going to be taken care of. If we give birth to them, their child is going to have opportunities and is going to have support to become what they need to become in life. So anyway, I'm glad that you're doing that because I've talked about that waiting list for a long time, several years now. They are the most vulnerable. Matter of fact, I know you'll have an ally in State Representative Josh Miller because I know he
has co-sponsored the bill.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know he wants to get that done. Matter of fact, he's been trying to get that done the entire time he's been down there, and it's just it's really been an uphill battle. State Representative Julie Mayberry, I appreciate you coming up with big ideas that don't raise taxes. Appreciate what you're doing with the developmentally disabled list, and just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
All righty.
Have a good day.
You too. State Representative Julie Mayberry, everybody. We're going to take a break. and we're going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The news from the General Assembly is that the governor's highway plan has passed, both parts of it, yesterday from the House floor. We'll bring you some more audio of that next. Real quick about the economy. The numbers came out, I think it was on Friday. It misses 3%. It comes in at 2.9%. Was that surprising to you? Because I know we had talked before, Dr. Busler, and we both of us were very optimistic about the types of GDP growth we could see.
Yeah. I'll tell you, things were going along real well until the month of December. And then, for some reason, everybody just sort of panicked. They started saying a recession is coming. The stock market was collapsing. And I said at the time, there really is no reason for stock prices to be falling. As a result of that, people got very nervous. The personal income was good in December, but retail sales and consumption were down, mostly because people got nervous and started saving their money. The personal savings rate, which is usually a little under 5%, for the month of December was up over 7.5%, up to 7.5%. So people got real nervous. The month of December tanked, and as a result of that, we're just going to miss.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
There was a piece about this last week about the amendment, is it Amendment 19? And what's the purpose of even having Amendment 19 if you can just tax a product twice, call it a new tax to get around the Constitution? The fuel tax has existed since 1934, so theoretically they should have had to have gotten 75 votes out of the House of Representatives to pass this tax increase yesterday for roads. Listen to this. For years, tax and spenders have been advising politicians they can change an element or two in a tax and claim Amendment 19 doesn't apply. Their risky advice is based on an Arkansas Supreme Court case from 1939 called, Caldera and McCarroll. In that case, the court allowed a beer tax to be imposed without a 3/4 vote. But there is a huge problem for the tax and spenders who rely on the case. Although the particular beer tax was upheld by a 4-3 opinion, only 2 of the justices agreed politicians could avoid the 3/4 vote requirement by changing some elements of the tax. The other 2 justices who upheld the tax used other grounds. Matter of fact, I think that tax specifically, it was a different kind of beer. It was a different kind of beer. It was still beer, but it was a different kind of beer was their argument back in 1939. Here is another problem in using the case. If the governor can use a sleight of hand to bypass the 3/4 vote requirement for the fuel tax, then every tax that existed in 1934 can be bypassed by the same kind of sleight of hand. And that would make Amendment 19 meaningless. Do you think the people of Arkansas meant for Amendment 19 to be meaningless? There is a premise that says you can't do indirectly what you are prohibited from doing directly. But that is exactly what the governor is prepared to do. It's what the House of Representatives just did. The plan to bypass Amendment 19 is on shaky legal grounds. If the governor's wholesale fuel tax gets a majority vote in the House of Representatives but does not get 3/4, the tax is a prime target for a legal challenge, and the votes yesterday was 71 yeas, and that's 4 short of 75 out of 100, the 3/4. Here is Democrat lawyer, leftist, far leftist, John Walker, yesterday from the House of Representatives. Listen to this.
This is indeed a rarity for me to be on the side of Representative Meeks and Representative Payton. In some ways, I guess I'm on the side of those people who promised that when they came here they would never vote for any tax increase. I think there are 15 or 20 of you who made those promises. No more taxes. And it reminds me of what's happening at the national level. So many people said that they wanted a balanced budget, and they wanted accountability, and they wanted to make sure that there was a cap on the national debt. Well, I guess when we get into the legislative sessions, we change our principles, and we then decide that pragmatism is more appropriate than idealism.
Uh-oh.
The 1/2 cent tax, when submitted to the voters, will be a continual tax, and it will affect all of us. But all of us, when we buy things, don't use the highways. But we're not taxing the people who destroy our highways. I mean, the trucks destroy our highways. Of course, we say the diesel tax will get them. But if we can tax cars, hybrids, $100, it looks to me as if, since most of the vehicles on the highways are 16 or 18-wheelers, then we can tax them $100 or $200 or more, and we can get all the money we need. It's no problem. We know that the destruction to our highways comes basically from 16, 18-wheelers. Now, and when you go on any highway, any interstate highway, you'll see that far fewer private car vehicles, personal vehicles, travel the highway.
So I thought his comments were interesting there about idealism versus pragmatism. I thought that was very interesting. Now, he's a leftist kind of guy. He even admits it's weird that I'm down here against this when Stephen Meeks is against it and John Payton is against it. That's very weird. But John Walker, it seems like he's hung up on the whole hybrid thing. You know, they're going to really tax electric and hybrid vehicles out of this. Like, that's one thing they're going to do, and that's still more money from the people. You know, that's still more money from the people. Say what you want. Now, they're going to say, well, they're not paying the gas tax, and that's what that's for. So, it's, in a way, it's punishing behavior. There's no question, and that's what it is. And you know, technology increases. The government can never really anticipate the technology. Oh, and that's why the internet sales tax is going to come down the pike. That's why that's a thing. That's why that's coming. When it's all said and done. Now, listen, I know. Where did my piece of paper go? I know that $200 million of this $415 million plan hasn't been enacted yet because the voters are going to have to vote on it in 2020. I understand that. But you know me, I can't abide by this idea. Well, I don't necessarily support the tax increase. I didn't vote for the tax increase. I voted for the people to vote for it. Well, I mean, I don't buy that argument. I don't buy it. You know, you were sitting down there with constitutional powers, and I'm going to say if you vote to put it on the ballot, then you support it. That's what I'm going to say, you know. Because, see, if you were against taxes and you voted against for putting it on the ballot, you could 100% guarantee you get what you want, which is, right, no new taxes. So we have this whole argument to think about now. Now we have the whole argument of, is this another example of the governor getting around the 3/4 vote requirement like he did with the line item veto when it came to Medicaid expansion funding, the Department of Human Services? Is this another example of that? The 3/4. See, this happened. Remember, there was this pesky Amendment 19 is there as a limited government check on spending money. Meaning, the Arkansas is with Amendment 19. If you're going to spend money in this state, if you're going to raise taxes or spend money, and I know. Amendment 19 is about taxes specifically. But we want to make sure that a vast majority, not a simple majority, but a vast majority agree with what we're going to spend money on. That's why a 75% threshold is in the Constitution of Arkansas. And it's actually a really, really, really neat thing. And it's a check on government, but but apparently there are ways to get around that check. And that's something that I think a judge is going to have to look at. 870-275-9799. They begin to collect the tax, the new tax on a product that's already taxed. They begin to collect that in October. Our tax cuts don't fully go into effect for 2 years.
Now, there is a revision coming out at the end of March, and they may revise it upward slightly. But we were on course for 3% until December hit. I think this year we're on course for a little over 3%. So I expect the economy to do a little better this year than it did last year.
Interesting. Well, the president certainly has everybody on the left and, some never-Trumpers. I mean, they certainly don't want the economy to do well at all, just because they don't like the man personally. That's what's so frustrating with me is we have liberals that want the economy to do bad. They want their fellow countrymen to do worse. Just because they have a personal disagreement with the president of the United States. And, that's very, very sad.
I think it's terrible. The priorities are supposed to be what's good for the country first, and then you consider what is good for your party. The Democrats have it backwards. They want to do what's good for their party, and then whatever happens to the country is after that. They were elected to lead and move things forward. They're spending all of their time investigating things, and clearly the Mueller report will be out any day now, I think, and we'll see what Bill Barr releases, probably all or most of it. But I believe it's going to show that there was no collusion with the Trump campaign. There was no obstruction of justice, and it's time to just drop this thing. Now you got this Jerry Nadler saying, well, based on what Cohen said in front of Congress the other day, there's 60 more people in the Trump organization that I want to interview. Now, I'll tell you, if you start interviewing all these, you're going to find some place where someone forgot to dot an I or cross a T, and the mainstream media is going to make a big thing out of this. It's detracting from the president doing his job. Look, in spite of every Democrat being against Trump, and in spite of 90% of the media coverage negative about Trump, and in spite of the fact some members of his own party don't even go along with him, in spite of all that, he's been able to accomplish some tremendous things. Imagine if people worked with him, how much more we could get done, and that's what frustrates me.
That's a really good point. And you mentioned Nadler. I mean, I was listening to a clip of him this morning coming into work, and he was saying that in order to impeach a president, you have to first go to the American people and convince them that he needs to be impeached. And I thought, well, that's not what you have to do to impeach somebody at all. You got to find an actual crime. It's not a popularity contest. We have to find a crime that was committed. I mean, it's just nuts. It's all politics. That's all it is. If it comes down to having to convince the people it needs to be done, then
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're broadcasting on great stations across Arkansas, as well as over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. But we're also over on YouTube. Please go to our YouTube channel, Conduit News, and subscribe to it, and click the little bell for notifications. You will get smaller videos that we upload. We take the interviews that we have on the show and we cut them up into smaller videos, so it makes it easier for you to share with your friends. One of those videos that's about to be made, we're making it right now, is with State Representative Rick Beck, a Republican from Center Ridge. He joins us now. State Representative Beck, welcome to the program, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I've listened to your show quite a bit, actually.
Well, I appreciate it. And I want you to tell everybody, District 65, geographically, can you set that up for the rest of the state so we know where that is?
That would be the Conway County, pretty much all of Conway County, and about 85% of the population of Perry County.
Okay, all right. So I wanted to have you on to talk about your bill, House Bill 1505, an act to require certain reports under the Transformation and Efficiencies Act of 2019, including savings reports for other purposes. What's this all about, sir?
Well, as part of the transformation, and we're going to form 15 departments that will be headed up by department secretaries. So what this report does simply, what the bill does quite simply, is requires that those secretaries heading up those departments produce back to the state agencies committee a report, and that report would show that how 1% savings could be achieved in their department. Now, it's important to remember that this only includes general revenue funds. It does not include any special revenue funds. It only includes agencies that would be in committees and boards that would be part of the transformation process. So basically, that secretary would come to the state agency 2 weeks prior to the next fiscal session and say, this is a report on how 1% could be saved. Now, does that mean that it would have that the state agencies would have to adopt that? No, they would not. They could keep something. They could, discard all of it if they wanted to, or they could just pull the parts that they wanted out of it. So, the ideal behind this really comes from my background. I have some work in lean, and it's really requiring or asking these department heads to go and look and say, how can you make your different agencies more efficient? Efficiency, if you'll drive efficiency, savings will automatically come from that. So that's one thing I would encourage them to empower the different agencies and the different members and the team members in those agencies to do their jobs more efficient. What do we need to do to make you more efficient? And then savings will automatically flow from that. The other low-hanging fruit would be the possibility of combining administrative type functions like HR and those types of things, where we'll have these new departments will have multiple agencies underneath them. Maybe we can combine those and save the taxpayers some money. If we were to go the full 1% and we were to adopt all of that, that would save the taxpayers about, and it's hard to determine because we don't know exactly who all is included in transformation yet, but that would include approximately, it should save us about $40 million.
Wow. We're talking with State Representative Rick Beck. So to kind of recap what you just said, this would require the agency heads 2 weeks before the fiscal session to submit a report about how they could reduce spending 1%. Is that correct?
Right. Now, that 1% is actually based upon the expenditures. It'd be a 1% cut from the expenditures of the 2019 fiscal year. So that would be the benchmark that they would go for the 1% off of.
Okay, so they submit that report. It's saying, if we had to, this is what it would look like. And then I guess that doesn't necessarily mean it happens. So what because I've been talking about this, I guess, for the last couple of weeks. It would be really nice if we would just cut 1% each department, leave it up to them to do. And that seems to be what you're doing. And then, but how would we then get? How would we then get to the reality of the reduction is actually going to occur?
Well, the timing of the report is not accidental. It's right before we would actually go into the budgeting process for that fiscal year. So it's really giving the legislators a tool in their hands, saying, hey, these are some areas where we could do. The report actually might include some suggestions of some regulations that could be changed that would facilitate some of these savings. So I think that's a good thing to do. The other thing that I really, obviously I like the bill, drafted it, but one of the things I really like about this bill is I've had people that come to me and they say, well, you're wanting to cut this agency or that agency, and I tell them, no, I'm not. What I'm wanting to do is to give the department secretaries, these people heading up these departments, I want to give them the ability to look at all of their agencies. It might be that we actually increase funding to an agency that's doing a great job, and take a much larger decrease from an agency that's maybe not doing that great of a job or is no longer needed. Mm-hmm. It's empowering them to give the Arkansans savings.
Yeah.
Through efficiency.
I think, this is a reason I wanted to have you on is because I think this is a good step in the right direction. I mean, I really do. Where is the bill right now in the process?
The bill was, oddly enough, the bill got referred to the same agency that the report will go to. It's state agencies. And right now, the bill was tabled. And it got tabled because later the day that I actually introduced the bill, later that day, the governor was going to speak about some transformation things to the committee. So they elected to table the bill until after they heard from the governor on the new changes to transformation. And it's scheduled to come off the table Wednesday morning, and I will be reintroducing it.
I mean, you got a lot of. It's House Bill 1505. You got a lot of House sponsors here. I mean, it's very popular, and you've got over in the Senate, Senator Ballinger, Senator Johnson signed on for it. I think a lot of people think this is common sense, and can kind of start the process of trying to get some of this agency growth out of the way. Hey, while I have you on, we're talking with State Representative Rick Beck. I noticed that yesterday during the highway proposal that has tax increases in it, as well as the constitutional amendment to keep a sales tax from sunsetting. I noticed you voted no on both of those measures. Do you mind sharing with our audience why you voted no?
Well, on Senate Bill 336, right? The reason I voted no on that is I honestly feel that we can do this better if we'll just. I didn't like the actual increase for the fuel tax. I read a report last week that says that with the diesel tax increase, which is 6% on that, that's going to put us higher than any of our surrounding states around us. Now, Arkansas is a major thoroughfare for these 18-wheelers coming across, and I think is it possible that we might see a reduction if we could price ourselves out of the market and not get those revenues from the diesels. But the other reason is I just don't think that we should be trying to increase the taxes. That Arkansas is a rural state. People need to drive to go back and forth to work. So that tax on fuel like that is I think it's very crippling to a lot of Arkansans, and that's why I just think we could have done it somewhere else. Now, as far as the
go ahead. No, you go ahead. Yeah, moving on to the constitutional amendment.
As far as the constitutional amendment is concerned, I just feel like we, by that I mean the legislators, should have handled that. And here's the reason why. I'm not saying yes or no as far as keeping that tax or letting it sunset, either way, but I think the discussion should have been in this chamber and then allow us to do it, because that gives us more ability to, if we decided to keep it, how it should be applied more directly. The way it will go now, it will go to the voters, and they will not have a choice to tweak it. You will have to say yes or no on this. So I would increasing that tax. Now, I would say that it would be better for us to do that. Plus, we also take up another slot by referring that to the people at this point. I just think that it should have been handled, yes or no, in the legislative process and not referred back to the people. And I know that some people may take exception with that, but I just think that we could have done more with it. And that's quite honestly what we were, I always say, hired to do. It would be a tough decision. We should have got input from the folks back home and voted up or down on that.
State Representative Rick Beck, I certainly agree with those points, and I think the people, like you said, we're a rural area, and every dime that we have is precious to us, and we're already giving the government a lot of money to fund some of this stuff, and yet we're still being asked to give even more. And so I appreciate you standing up. I appreciate you coming on the program today. I appreciate your bill to reduce, government, or to kind of start the conversation about reducing government. And it's been a pleasure to have you on, sir. I really appreciate you.
I've really enjoyed it, and please invite me back some other time.
Yes, absolutely. Let's make this a regular thing. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sir. State Representative Rick Beck, everybody. It's great to have him on for the first time. I got a text message. Hang on a second. Hang on. I got this text message I got to read, everybody. I got a friend of mine that's listening. And he sent me a photo of a road with potholes all in it. Just nothing, covered in chug holes. And it's a meme. And it says, "If it pleases the crown, would thou kindly repair the road I was already taxed to build, as to minimize damage to the car I am annually taxed to own, which I purchased with income you already taxed." The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break, reset, be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
To me, it's politics at that point. So
that's absolutely right. Look, the fact is the Democrats still haven't gotten over the fact that they lost in 2016. And from the first day, literally, that President Trump took office, you had Maxine Waters running around screaming, impeach 45, impeach 45. He didn't even get into office to do anything yet, and you're ready to impeach. I think the Democrats' behavior is disgusting and really despicable.
Yeah.
You should really, whether you like the president or not, he is the president. You have to support the president and do what's right for the country. He's over there trying to negotiate for the first time. North Korea says that we will get rid of the nuclear weapons. For the first time, they're negotiating that, and the Democrats put on a display that just weakens the president.
Exactly.
They have to put the country forward rather than their party.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that think that the North Koreans...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, let me see here. Where's the Arkansas Democrat Gazette headline again? Because this is the one everyone's going to see, right? Listen to this headline. Headline, House advances governor's plan on road funding. Bill gains approval. Proposal for 2020 ballot cleared 2. No mention in the headline of a tax increase. I don't know who's writing the headlines, but no mention. By a vote of 71-26, State House approved Senate Bill 336 by Senator Terry Rice. The legislation, which already passed in the Senate, would levy a wholesale tax. I mean, so you would see 1, 2, 3. You've got you got to get to the third paragraph before we understand that there's going to be a tax increase. Then the House's 67-30 vote sends a resolution to the Senate for consideration. The 0.5% sales tax was initially approved by voters in 2012 with a 10-year sunset clause to pay off highway bonds and interest. So that's going to go to the Senate, where it's going to pass with flying colors. Quote, it is gratifying to work with members of the General Assembly who understand the dire need to fund and upkeep our roads now and into the future, Asa Hutchinson said in a statement. The passage of this historic bill is a solid and necessary measure to ensure we keep our roads in good repair, which is essential to our commerce and daily life. Now, there's no doubt that good roads are essential to our commerce and daily life. The question is, why, after 4 years? It'd be one thing. It'd be one thing if the governor was newly elected and he had inherited some massive crisis or something. You know what I mean? But this is after 4 years. You're in your second term, and now here we come with these gas tax increases. Now, hey, say what you want to about the Arkansas General Assembly, but at least when it comes to the wholesale gas tax, they own it. I mean, they straight up said, you know what? We're going to pass this thing because we believe it and we can own up to it. I can at least respect that they're honest with us, saying, you know, I never thought I'd raise taxes, but I got to raise taxes. Here's State Representative Jeff Wardlaw on the constitutional amendment side, trying to keep a 0.5-cent sales tax from sunsetting. This is what he said about the bill.
A democracy to work. We're going to send this resolution out to the people to vote.
Can you back up? I want to see, what exactly did he just say about democracy? What did he just say about democracy? I got to hear this. Back up a little bit. Are we
for the last 10 years? So
back up even more.
This bill does not.
Back up even more. I want to hear everything he says about, because he's talking about 10 years. So, I mean, he's talking about the substance of the bill. Let's see here. We can't get the buffer to work. Here we go.
The roads and city streets.
All right, here we go. State Representative
Wardlaw,
Jeff.
you're recognized to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know how you followed that one. Members of the House Joint Resolution 1018 is basically a bill that allows a democracy to work. We're going to send this resolution out to the people to vote whether they want a continuation of the 0.5-cent sales tax that we've already had for the last 10 years. So this bill does not have a sunset on it. It's not allowed to be bonded. The benefits for that is that to bond this tax over 10 years would cost us $125 million. That $125 million can now be put to use in building and fixing our highway system. So we put that there. We also put an amendment on it at the last minute to allow the cities and counties to continue to bond their part. And they asked for that, so we gave them that ability. So with that, I'd appreciate a good vote. Be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Wardlaw has explained the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Representative Mayberry, you're recognized to speak against the resolution.
All right, now this stop right there. We heard from State Representative Mayberry at the top of this hour, and we also played this for you last hour as well. But that was State Representative Jeff Wardlaw. In the interest of democracy, he said, this is what's going to, this is about democracy and referring it to the people. The same sales tax we've had for 10 years. Now, no mention of the fact. Now, State Representative Mayberry mentioned it, but no mention of the fact that this was originally sold to the people as a cap, a 10-year program with a sunset in it. And I wonder how many people actually care at this point. How many people actually care that in 2011, the legislature in 2012, you guys, we all voted, and the government said that it was going to increase. This is actually less about the actual amount of money coming out of our pockets, and it's more about the power of the government. We've been talking a lot about dollars and cents, and dollars and cents are important, but you know what's more important is that the government is increasing in size and power. And when that happens, our liberty shrinks. Our liberty shrinks as government grows. And it's something that can't be argued with. That's a fact. It's a fact throughout our history. It's the very reason people, decided to break off and form this country in the first place. On Monday, I played for you Dennis Prager on Judge Jeanine talking about socialism and how socialism only works if capitalism exists first to fund it. We do not live in a world with unlimited resources. The people of Arkansas are taxed too much, and the tax burden on us is already high, and it looks like when it's all said and done and the General Assembly sine die, that's their term, their pomp and circumstance term for ending the session and allowing an average Arkansan actually get a decent night of sleep. When they sine die at the end of the day, are we going to be paying more money to the government, or are we going to pay less money to the government? We're going to be paying the same amount of money to the government. And right now it looks like we're going to be paying more. Right now, they haven't even brought back the internet sales tax yet. That's supposed to come up soon. I remember 2 years ago, we couldn't do real tax reform because we needed to have a task force first. And there was much debate. There was a lot of money spent on a task force that met, gave reports, hired consultants, then fired a consultant because he ended up being a liberal, but it maybe kind of feel like maybe we took his advice even while he was here. He was kind of like the Greamer Wormtongue of the task force. And now here we are. This task force, if you go look up the title of it, had the word relief in it. And the overall tax burden has to go down if we're going to actually give the people relief. Not to mention, over the last 4 years, we have seen income tax reductions to the tune of $100 million for middle income, $50 million for the lowest income, another $100 million this year for high income. And in 2 votes yesterday, the Arkansas General Assembly potentially levies $415 million more from the people, $300 million to the state, and $115 million to cities and counties. In 2 votes, they very well could have wiped out all of the income tax cuts over the last 4 years. That is incredible to me when you think about it. That's incredible. I mean, not only wiped them out, but then increased them. The phrase, we're going to take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, that doesn't even really begin to cover it here. When you look at the campaign rhetoric that continues to get Republicans elected based on popular ideas of limited government and lower taxations and less regulation. So then why is the news today so bad for conservatives? Well, I think it's so bad because we financially in this state are in really bad shape, and the newspaper's not telling you, and I don't think our leaders are being entirely honest with how fiscally strapped we are. I mean, we kind of had some foreshadowing of this several years ago. We have some of that foreshadowing turning out to be true when we have the property tax relief fund that's attempted and being raided right now to be spent other places. And again, I ended the show yesterday with this, but 3 years ago, the state share of Obamacare Medicaid expansion welfare was only supposed to be $50 million. And wouldn't you know, because the program has expanded and costs have risen, our share this fiscal year is $138 million. And that's why they need to raise our taxes. That's the truth.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas.